the system. This one doc had been in the system for 20 years, waiting for his day in court, which never came.
Are you serious?
Yeah. And there was several people like that. But this one had been there for 20 years. I was like, it's not going to happen, dude. They just want to keep you in here and throw away the key. And I ended up going to several different places and learned a lot about our prison system. It's not, you know, Club Med like a lot of people say. It was pretty torturous, and I even got thrown in what they call the hole several times. They had, you know, a steel thing that they had in the floor, and they'd throw you down in this hole. It was in the dirt. They'd throw a little food, a little water down occasionally. And I lost about 56 pounds while I was in, and my cancer recurred here in this right humerus in the bone. And I remember I was down in the hole and I was praying, and this light shows up, and Jesus appears to me again, and he says, Scott, you're going to have to do something to get out of here. And I'm like, okay, what do I need to do? He says, they'll want you to admit to at least one count of fraud, so you're going to have to lie, because I know your integrity. You haven't committed any fraud, but you need to lie and tell them, yeah, I committed one count of fraud. And give up your medical license voluntarily, because they can't take it away from you, because they couldn't get anybody to testify against me, because everybody they went to, they said, well, why are you prosecuting him? He helped me heal. I don't have the disease now. I had the disease, and he helped cure it. And so anyway, here I am, down in the hole, praying to God, and Jesus comes and tells me exactly what I'm supposed to do. That next morning, they actually let me out of the hole. And they must have influenced somebody. Jesus must have influenced somebody to have compassion, because I was literally rotting down there. And I was able to get a shower, and they actually let me call my wife. And I said to my wife on the phone, it's time to get out of here. I'm ready to make a deal with the attorney, and I'm ready to give up my medical license. I'm ready to admit to one count of fraud, and I'm willing to pay whatever penalty they have with that one count of fraud. And so the next day, I get a call from the prosecuting attorney, because I didn't have a defense attorney because I couldn't afford one. The judge had, you know, the guy they had given me was so inadequate, I fired him. And anyway, the prosecuting attorney said, are you ready to make a deal? You're willing to admit to 156 counts of fraud, pay a fine of $4 million, and we'll let you out. And I said, you know damn well I didn't commit any fraud, but I'm willing to say I did one count, and I paid the fine on that. And he says, now you're going to have to voluntarily relinquish your license, and you know, all this stuff. And anyway, took about a couple of weeks of processing, and they transported me back to Utah and let me out. And my parents picked me up in Ogden, Utah. And anyway, I had to go to court the next day, but I wanted to see my wife so bad that I had my parents drive me clear to southern Utah. I got there about 2 in the morning and greeted my wife. We stayed up until 6, actually about 5, and headed back up to Salt Lake City to the courthouse. And I made a deal. But here I am, out of prison, which is good. The reason you go through these things in life is to see how you react to the people. You know, I gave the prosecuting attorney a big hug and just surprised the heck out of him. I even tried to hug the judge, but he backed off. And because I had to learn to love these people, even though they had ruined my life. And sometimes those things happen to us. And luckily, when I got back to St. George, my sister-in-law was doing a class with this lady by the name of Catherine Beck. And she was 82 at the time, and she was a very, very famous psychic, actually. And so when I went to the class, she finished teaching. She said, "This is the last class I'm teaching. I'm going to focus on that guy right there." And she helped me heal from all the crap. And, you know, to this day, I'll be so grateful to her for teaching me. She literally took and mentored me and helped me understand psychic law and all about forgiveness and getting rid of the negative energies. Because we store those in our auric field, believe it or not, and they come back and they haunt us. Every time we see somebody who offended us, we go back to the bad thoughts because they're stored and we bring them up again. And so she taught me how to get rid of that. And one of the things she taught me was, every time you get angry or have, you know, a negative emotion or whatever, you say to yourself, "I cancel that emotion." And I replace it with the opposite emotion or love. And so I've done that time and time again. And then when I went to Hawaii to write my memoirs, I told my wife I need to go and write all this down because I've got quite a story to tell. And I sat down to write my story, and these 12 kahuna appeared in front of me. And they said, "Scott, it's not time to write your memoirs yet. You're going to write this book." This was the first book I wrote. And they would give me 2 or 3 things each day to heal myself and have me write a story about it. And it's quite an interesting book. It ended up being what you call an oracle book. I had no idea it would turn out this way. The book vibrated at 780 on Dr. David Hawkins' scale, the map of consciousness. And guess what? I met David Hawkins, MD, PhD, and was able to talk to him, and he tested my book, and he's the one that tested it at 780. And guess what 780 vibrates at? Health. The word health vibrates at 780, which is in Christ consciousness, which is pretty cool. Anything above 700. And the other interesting thing about this book is you hold it and you ask, "What do I do for my health today?" You open it up and it takes you to that modality that you're supposed to do. And it's not just herb, it's things that you're supposed to do. So, quite an interesting book. Oh, lots to go through today, and we've got another 40 minutes, thank you. So, does anybody need a break?
No.
Okay, so let's keep going. So, right after writing that book, I went down to the Amazon for a shamanic adventure. And we, you know, went to Machu Picchu, we went to the Sacred Valley, we went through all kinds of different shamanic rituals. And I could feel my body changing. Peru is the new Tibet, believe it or not, because Tibet isn't very accessible due to the communist regime that's taken over there. And so the energies transfer down to the Andes down there in South America. And when we went down and did the ayahuasca, I was very prepared. I had questions I wanted to ask, and it was quite interesting. And I'm supposed to tell you about that experience. Basically, you know, the shaman is there to protect you and to help you with your experience, and he whistles and chimes and does, you know, prayers and all kinds of stuff to keep everybody safe. And they put us in a big circle, and they put Vicky, my wife, clear over on the other side because they didn't want our energies intermingling. And he started with me, gave me a big glass of the ayahuasca. And, you know, I drank it down and I yelled, "Vicky, it's not as bad as some of the stuff we make." You know, I mean, it's horrible tasting, but it really wasn't as bad as what I thought it was going to be. Because a lot of people say, oh, it tastes like poop, you know. And so anyway, I sat there and I was, you know, I was first, so I thought, oh, I'm going to have the first experience. Everybody around, you know, the shaman went clear around, and people start having their experiences, and I'm sitting here going, I'm not feeling nothing. So I called over to the ayahuasquero and I said, give me some more. And he's like, no. So I was like, well, holy crap, you know, when am I going to have my experience? So I sat there and sat there. Another 20 minutes went by. So I said in my mind, I need more. I just telepathically, I didn't speak. And the shaman dances over to me, pours a big old full glass, and he says, "Tómalo todo." Drink it all. And I brought it to my mouth, and the spirit says, only take a quarter of it. So I drank down just a little bit, and I shoved it back at him. He said, "No, tómalo todo." And then he shoved it back at me, and I brought it up to my lips, and I couldn't do it, because my spirit was saying, no, you've got enough. So I put it back at him, and he just smiled and started whistling and going off and helping the other people. So within about 10 minutes, I was sitting there looking at everybody. The gal next to me started throwing up in neon lights, heroin, marijuana, cocaine, LSD. She had actually come to clean her body out from all of these substances. And she was literally vomiting them out. And I could see the energy of the substance in neon lights. It was pretty cool. And then the lady on my other side had come to resolve emotional problems with her husband. And I could see all of these emotions of hate and guilt and shame coming out of her in neon lights. And I was looking all around, and then I heard this voice, a female voice. Very first time I've ever heard a female voice in my head say, "Scott, close your eyes. It's time for you to have your experience." And so I looked up, and I saw the entire sky of stars connect the constellations. It was fascinating. She said, "Scott, close your eyes." So I closed my eyes, and I was in the matrix. It was so cool, because there was all these lights. And as I looked around, there was this big carousel. And I said, "What is that?" And she says, "That's all the humans on the planet. And they're going round and round, and they don't get off the carousel." I said, "Why am I off the carousel?" She said, "Because you stepped off a long time ago." Which was quite interesting. And one of my other questions was, you know, one of my questions was, what is the Matrix? And I was taken right there. And it was similar to the show The Matrix, but it was light, colored lights going all over, not just black and white going up and down like on The Matrix. But anyway, I said, what is creating the Matrix? And she took me back, and there was this bulb projecting all of the light. And I said, what is that? She said, a neuron of God. And I was like, well, show me God. And so we went way back, and the entire universe was out there. And there was this huge light that was projecting all of these tubes to all of the different universes. And quite fascinating. You know, I'd never looked at something like that. And I thanked her. And the other reason I had gone was to get rid of my stuff. And so I said, how do I get rid of my stuff? And she said, you go into your body and your auric field, and you gather up all the darkness. And so I went around gathering all of the negativity that I had done through past lives, all kinds of lives. And I gathered up this goo that was black and dark and just very negative. It felt awful. And I wanted to get rid of it. And she says, I said, how do I get rid of it? She says, give it to God. And I was like, okay. who is God? She said, you are. And I was like, you mean I've got to consume this? She said, give it to God. I was like, how do I do that? And I stood up and I opened my eyes and I looked down in the sand. And the sand was faces, these faces, you know, and they were smiling at me. And I would ask them, can I give this to you? And they would frown and they'd say no. And so I start walking away from the group, you know, trying to find where I was supposed to give this and put it somewhere. And I kept asking as I walked along all of these faces. And each one of them were smiling at me before when I asked them if they'd take my stuff. They didn't want it. It was actually, you know, they frowned at me and did not want this stuff. So I got down to the Amazon and I asked the Amazon. It was really interesting. This big wave came up and started talking to me. And I said, will you take my stuff? And the water said, no, you're supposed to give it to God. And I was like, okay, who's God? You are. You know, it took me a couple of times of these creations telling me that we are God's in order to get it. So anyway, I'm sitting there holding this dark glob of crap that I had created, and I said, so what do we do? And this voice said, you created it. You need to uncreate it. And I was like, we can do that? And the voice said, yes. So I took that glob and I just said in my mind, I uncreate all of this. And all of a sudden it was gone. I came out of the ayahuasca and I looked over at the group, and there was this huge cloud that had descended on them and got them all wet. It was quite interesting. And here I was, nice and dry, down by the Amazon. I hadn't pooped, I hadn't thrown up, you know, because everybody else was pooping and throwing up, like, oh, get out. And so anyway, I looked over and saw they were all wet. So I went over and started putting blankets on everybody, and the shaman was really happy I was doing that, so he kind of smiled at me and said, keep doing it. And my wife was just shivering, and I put a blanket over her, and she was very grateful, and they were all still having experiences, but I had totally came out of the ayahuasca. I was only in it for an hour and a half. And the reason I tell you this story is you are God. You are the creators of everything that you've done. And we need to uncreate whatever we have created that we don't like, that doesn't serve us, that doesn't help us. And we have that power. Know that you have the power to uncreate whatever you've created. Sorry, pointing to evil. Pointing shoots out energy. But I'm shooting out good energy, so. So please know that you are the gods, and you can create and uncreate. And it's time for us to start creating a different world and uncreate all of the naughtiness that we've created. So, when I got back from my first experience with the ayahuasca, believe it or not, I went again. I drank the stuff, drank more. No experience. No experience. It was really interesting. Everybody else was having these experiences. It was like I was done. I had been taught what I needed to know. And, you know, so I was a little bit disappointed that I wasn't able to have another experience, but it wasn't meant to be, because, you know, we're living in this world where the lesson I got from that was I was supposed to stay focused on what I was supposed to do. So I was going through quite a bit of changes, and my psychic abilities increased, my hearing, my clairsentience, clairaudience, clairvoyance, claircognizance were all there. And I did a lot of medical intuitive readings on people and helped them by